evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all doing? Hope you're well. Yeah, we're back. Another episode of Q&A. Cracking auction last night. Had thoroughly enjoyed that. Good crack with everybody. Chris included. He does take it well, bless him. So, yeah, here we are for question time live again. Feel free to start firing any questions in. Say we'll go with what's live first of all. And then look to, go to some of the old ones if we need to. Not that we often do, because tend to run out of time more often than not. Not going to blabber on too much about anything we've got going on at the minute. I think I covered all that last night, to be fair. Have got Steve in the background today, which is good. Keep on top of some of them comments and stuff coming in, make it a bit easier, because it soon gets sort of gets clogged up. But yeah, other than that, busy times, sending shipments out today. Again, just really working on them, managing on the feeding levels at the minute. It really is a constant daily observation, tweaking, changing, obviously with so many ponds as well. There's only actually so many I can observe at the given sort of feeding windows when I need to, because a lot of them are on the same feeding program. So it's not just like I can see them all in one glance. I have to kind of one day one, next day another few, as many as I can sort of get in that area, to be honest with you. What we've got there. Nice. I have actually seen, and fair play to people, there's a few people committing to re-watching all the Q&A episodes from the beginning. And what are we, 64 in? 64 hours worth of commitment there. That's impressive. Hats off to them guys that's been doing that. But obviously also hats off to them guys that have been here from the beginning as well, to be honest with you. Evening, Ian. How you doing, buddy? I see there we've got a question. What are the price of the Tamasaba going out at, please? Just bear with me. There we go. Jay, to be honest with you, I need to get in touch with some of the guys that's had them. I'm not sure. You've got my dad at Westview Fancies. I'm not sure what he's got left. Perfect Aquatics have got quite a lot. I know Sunnybank Koi's had some, and quite a few other dealers. If you want all the specifics, you'd have to get in touch with us privately, and we can send you a full list. That's just recent deliveries I know of people that's got them, buddy. So best off getting in touch with those. And Oi Koi, he's done quite a few as well, to be honest with you. So individually pictured on his website as well. I believe he's been doing a few times. So quite a good shout there. So questions, guys, please start firing them in. I think we've got a few already. Let me just have fill the list out and have a look through. That's not really a Q&A one, but there we go. Evening all, currently in the process of getting everything ready to start my pond build. Do you have to bulk buy fish, or can anyone join the auctions? Yeah, so our auctions are not, we don't deal directly with private hobbyists. Everything is done through our dealer network. So yeah, with the auctions, basically you join in on the evening that it's on, you can bid, and just at the end of it, if you are a winning bidder, your transaction, you select one of our dealers to put it through. Those dealers also have a cracking range of fish of ours available in stores as well to get hold of, and also then deal with any specific needs you might have that we can then cater for with the fish we've got at the farm. So yeah, hope that answers that one for you. Rory, would you say the NND DK Shiro are more reliable sooner than Omasako, but still have the size genetics, so maybe a better one to bet on? Yeah, this is an interesting one. They're very different lineages, and you've got to remember the DK lineage is built off of the Omasako line. Originally, the NND lineage didn't have any Omasako blood in. I'd assume he was phenomenal, came very young, stayed there, and had great quality. Very, very dependable and reliable. So obviously mixing the Omasako in is going to change that a little bit, and it's certainly added the growth genetics to them. I do love the NND DK Shiro. They've created something superb there that is now, they're getting size potential. Body lines are a lot stronger. Sumi is still pretty reliable and dependable, like with the original lineage. I have not really seen a massive change in that. There's obviously going to be some that throw different characteristics, but the vast majority is what we look at, and have still been quite stable. When you go to Omasako, however, and you see Omasako, it just makes you realise that just about everybody else out there producing Shiro Utsuri is kind of playing at it compared to them guys. Now, as a lineage, it's a lot to get your head around. Omasako Sumi is a lot to understand. It reacts so differently in so many different environments, as Sumi does naturally. But Omasako is one I've not even truly fully got my head around to date. Different parent sets with different characteristics, different Sumi styles coming out of the lineages. It's a lot. And, you know, there's curveballs, there's those fish that we've seen Omasako's come from nearly pure white to being absolute world beaters. Then others that give you that eternal Tatigoi kind of vibe where you see the underlying Sumi and it never actually comes through. But overall, I think it's clear Omasako is still the king of this variety. You see that wrong way. Calendar behind me, you know, just full of show-winning fish from big sizes. And when it comes to big size Shiro, you know, they have an abundance that you just don't see anywhere else. NND, unfortunately, is not even close to having a fraction of what these guys have in regards to big, super high level Shiro Utsuri. So as much as I love the DK lineage and what it's produced, and it's still in its infancy compared to Omasako, I think that's important to remember. It's still a very, very young lineage that needs time. They've got to develop those fish and still develop the lineage over time, which they will. But yeah, Omasako is just the powerhouse in Shiro Utsuri. And still now, you know, I've got a lot of Omasako fish here. That quality just consistently you're seeing them is superb. Even now, you know, they're leading the way really with the male Shiro Utsuri, because I've said before, I'm not a fan. One of the varieties still in male format I'm not a huge fan of, but they seem to be really leading the way in producing them with less male characteristics as well. So yeah, there you go, Rory. I think the best solution to that one, mate, is one of each, or even two of each. You can never have enough Shiro Utsuri. So hope that answers that and gives you all a bit more of an insight into what's going on there. What do you look for in a show quality achiever? Right, so obviously body up there as always. Quality of the coloration. You want obviously a nice, clean colour. I think with achiever, it's nice to see kind of a structured Kohaku pattern. Tends to really suit them. And then you've got the sort of netting effect you're looking for on there. The quality of that reticulation and scalation is really important. But first and foremost, a nice contrast in the colour as well. There's different shades to the pigmentation from yellowy kind of bronzy colour right up to a browny red. So that's not necessarily so important. The quality of that reticulation body and that kind of structured Kohaku pattern seems to get Achiever over the line nicely. Right, come on, don't be shy, folks. Get those questions fired in. Normally, you just completely beat me here, but I'm clearing these up at the minute, so get them fired in. Ian, question for you, mate. Obviously, in winter you heat, but in the summer, being in the polytunnels, how do you stop the temperatures getting too much? Yeah, with that one, buddy, I don't stop them getting too much. Unfortunately, it's one of the trade-offs. There always is a trade-off. There is no way I'm installing, heat pumps for the chillers side of it. That's just going to be impossible and mighty expensive. So yeah, as with like the breeders in Japan, if they've got fish indoors or they're even the mud ponds excessively warm summers, we just have to deal with what's thrown at us. A lot of the case with them getting too much, obviously we can get shading on, because the UV strength is something that bothers me. And I have been getting shading across the surface of some of the ponds as well for the real intense days, which has been helping. But yeah, as for water temperatures, the biggest problem I have is managing the oxygen levels, and that can have a knock-on effect with the feeding as well. So on that, it's just a case of making sure when they get to a certain point, I can see the appetite dip off. So it's reducing that feeding, or sometimes actually stopping feeding altogether and just putting a very small in, manually turning the auto feeders off and dealing with it in that way, which I often do. So yeah, that's that one, mate. It's nature. We have to deal with what's thrown at us. The big trade-off is obviously I get, at the very least, get the optimum temperatures I want for at least 5 months of the year free of charge. If I was having to pay for that, it would just make the whole thing nigh on impossible, to be fair. So it's nice to get that free heat, as the breeders do, because it helps keeping costs down. Because yeah, I've got an efficient heating system, but you know, it's a lot in winter when you've got that oil van coming every couple of weeks, filling up. It soon racks up, mate. So I'm glad I don't have it all through the summer as well. Joe, when are you getting new Cargate Shiro in? I've already told you, buddy, they're growing. They're already on. We're up from 10 to 12 cm to 15 to 18 cm now. So they're coming, mate. Don't worry. And this one won't be as damaging on the wallet, mate, either. Right, Darren Pellet, what is the best way to reduce phosphate in tap water? Yeah, to be honest with you, Darren, I'm going to say, you know, what's the worry? What do you think you're doing in reducing phosphate in your tap water? Why do you need to be reducing it? Obviously, we know it feeds blanket weed a little bit, but there might be a whole other host of problems in there as well. To be fair, you can get phosphate removers for your pond. There are some cartridges that I know of, I believe, from the past that do it, but there's trade-offs with them as well. And the trade-offs I didn't particularly like. I can't remember exactly what it was with those cartridges. But phosphate removers for ponds are generally not often costly, not cost-effective. And yeah, I would just question, you know, if everything's all right, why are you feeling the need to tinker with your phosphate? I don't even test it. Don't test it in the tap water. Don't test it in the pond. Don't worry too much about it. So yeah, I'm not going to shed much more on that because it's not something I'm particularly hooked on or want other people getting too obsessed with getting hooked on either, to be fair. But feel free to enlighten. I you know, appreciate if you let us know the angle you're coming from with it and why you're actually looking into it more than anything at the moment. Chris Watkins, hi Ricky. If you have a Skittish towsite in the pond together with some big fish, is it possible to tame the fish in some way in order to be? Oh, brilliant! I've got Arthur's snucking just to let me know his tooth's out. Good lad.
I sucked my ice cream and then it just came out.
Brilliant. The chaos has arrived. Go on then, darling. I'll see you later. So yeah, the tooth lumineck, that one's been hanging on by a thread for weeks. I'm glad that's gone. Brilliant. Right, back on track. If I have a Skittish towsite in the pond together with some big fish, is it possible to tame the fish in some way in order not to be skittish? Yeah, I mean, it all depends really on the whole setup. What you're going to tend to find is the towsite could be skittish because of the big fish at feeding time. Is that you need to look if that's causing the skittishness, because it can do. Can be part of what happens when you've got these mixed groups in a pond. You can get one group that loses out because of stuff like this. So, yeah, really, really important just to observe what might actually be causing it. I'm presuming from what you've said there, it's not the whole group that's skittish, because that's then a different problem. If it's the whole group that's skittish, that could be to not having enough fish in the pond, just needing something that's a less skittish variety in there to calm them down as well. But if it's just a skittish towsite, it might be that that one's feeling a bit intimidated by the other fish that's in there. It's just going to need a bit more time to get a bit of size on it and settle into to the environment. God, I'm flagging a bit tonight, folks. I'm not going to lie. All of a sudden, I had a long day at it. It's just hit me like a ton of bricks. So, Nick, should I be using salt in my new 4,500 gallon pond, 25 fish? Nick, is there any problems with the pond? That's what I'd have to ask. If there's no problems, you don't need to be using salt. If there's some issues, is salt the right thing to be using in there? Really need to know more about, to be honest, Nick, have you got any issues? What are the issues? And then I can really answer that question properly for you. So feel free to comment again and you know, enlighten me a little bit more as to what's going on. Owen Appleton, searching for a Tancho Kohaku. What should I be looking for in terms of the fish itself? Cheers. Yeah, now there's a task for you. These are a really, really tough variety. There's not a lot of good Tancho Kohaku in circulation. And I think this is the problem. To be honest with you, Owen, you're really going to have to adapt. I don't know what your budget is, but you're really going to have to adapt what you're looking for based on the budget. That's the really important thing here, as with any koi, but specifically with them, because so few people really produce them. You only really got Canico doing it to any kind of consistent level every year. And even then, they're pricey. There's so much demand. They're so difficult to get. And when you do get them, because of the price they command, you've got to then manage your expectations based on what your budget is, mate, to be honest. So, yeah, can't really say much more than that on it. Obviously, what you are looking for in the ideal world is a nice, clean spot. I think with Kohaku, it's less and less important to look for the super clean fins because it's widely accepted in Japan that, you know, you can have sumi come up in the fins. So, yeah, it is an interesting dynamic to it. Currently looking around £1,500-ish. It's a very healthy budget, mate. And I always say this, you know, £1,500 is a great budget for any fish. It's a lot of money. Just in the world of koi and the world of Tancho, Kohaku especially, you might find it doesn't go very far. So what I'd say is remove male or female out the equation. That's going to narrow it right down. I think to get the kind of qualities in female at that price point, it's going to be really, really difficult. There's going to be some compromise there. Yeah, and then it's just all really boiling down to, like I say, that level of cleanliness. What you are looking for is a good, well-proportioned spot, a clean spot, good shine and luster throughout. It's important. The Matsubamon can be sat down a little bit because that's naturally going to come through with a bit more time. But yeah, you want nice, clean fukurin and the Matsubamon. And then, like I say, a nice luster throughout the fish as well. All really important, but it's like this big wish list. And then it's a case of prioritizing based on that budget. Say if you're looking for all that, then you stick female on, and then you say looking for Nisai as well, which I'd probably recommend at the budget you're at worth going for Nisai because you just get that extra bit of security there that fish has gone through the year. What you don't want to go is go massively deep on the toe side that so much can go wrong with it. So I'd head for Nisai, remove male or female, just focus on the qualities, look for the best spot that you can, and then work everything from there. But yeah, just on that Kohaku thing, because it's been hammered for years, they don't need to have bright white fins. It's lovely to see, don't get me wrong, but we've seen one examples in Japan. There's examples on that poster behind from Omasako, all of which have that grey kind of sumi effect in the fins. It's everything else is more important, like I say, the quality of the fukurin, Subamon, shine, everything else. So best of luck in your search, buddy. If you do manage to find a pot of them at the end of the rainbow, please let me know. And does the colour of the spot matter in terms of the richness? No, not necessarily. What you do want to be, if it's a paler, lighter spot, you might want to throw some caution around it because there could be some concern there that might not be particularly stable colour. But more importantly, you want consistency of the colour in the spot. That's more important than anything. If you've got it where you're a bit patchy or there's lighter patches, that is a time to be concerned that spot might actually might not hang around. So hope that's useful for you. Right, let's see what else we've got. Colin. Hi, Mr. Whippy. Also, as Costia, what's the results at 30C? I'm at 27 on SRC pump, and how many days should I hold it at 30? Right, let me get my head around that, Colin, because I am flagging a bit. So you're heat treating for Costia, I presume, on that basis. Yeah, not a fan of that method, buddy, in the slightest, not going to lie. Presumably, obviously, you must be having issues with it. I mean, you can remove it at 30, but also I've had Costia swimming around at 30 degrees in the past as well. So I've been more looking at medications to get rid of that, in all fairness. There's medications that will eradicate it. If you're struggling, I'd have to look at the bigger picture. Is there a particular, maybe a host or a carrier in there that's reinfecting the batch? But you should be able to get rid of that with something formalin-based, PP at the right dose, or Columbo, Alprex. I'm not an advocate of using heat to treat a parasite like that because there's too many trade-offs, to be fair. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that, buddy. So if you are, just shed some light on us if that is a batch that you've been struggling. Yeah, I mean, right, there we go. So chloramine tea, I would never be using for Costia. Absolute waste of time from my experience. Like I said, I'd have gone with any of the treatments I mentioned. Alprex, I love. The reason I do like Alprex for it is we've got the really strong acroflavin in there, because what Costia does is damages the slime coat really quickly. And what Alprex is great for is helping soothe that and recover it. So it's very, very good at getting rid of the thing. The trade-off is it's going to stain your water up for quite a while, but it should eradicate the Costia, and then, like I say, help just soothe the skin after with the effect of the acroflavin. If for some reason you didn't find Alprex worked, or you wanted something that doesn't linger around in the water so much, malachite and formalin, again, it's looking at the formalin base of that. The formalin should be strong enough to remove the Costia as well. PP of all of them is the hardest one, I think, to get rid, because you've got to get the dose right and understanding what the correct dose is for your pond in order to get a good enough reaction to eradicate Costia is going to be a lot harder. So get cooling that heat pump down, to be fair, mate, and get some medication in there, because trade-offs, like I say, you're possibly going to decrease your appetite of your fish even more so, because you're managing your oxygen levels, which they'll be all right at them temperatures, to be fair, but it's not recommended. It's also going to cause stress on the colour of your fish, which if you can avoid it, I always would. I can't avoid it because they're in the greenhouses, and it does cause stress on the coloration. So get winding it down, get some medication in there, and get it wiped out, mate, to be fair. Next question. Koi Beginnings, how you doing, buddy? I'm feeding 64 grams every hour for 12 hours. I'm getting the length, but not body. Can simply dropping the heater from 24 to 89, to 18 to 19, make a difference. Then when body comes, go back to 24. Right. So where you're at with that, I'm not a big fan of feeding every hour, to be honest, straight away. Yes, temperature will make a difference. So when you get up to them 24, 25, it's going to take a lot more food to build body and get the length. You're going to get the length, but then building body at the same time, it takes a lot more food to do it. What I suggest here, rather than just hitting the fish every hour, I would be changing to every 2 hours. So my regime at that temperature level you're at, if you've got a mixed pond with mixed sizes, this could differ. So basically, you're going to be looking at feeding between every 2 to 3 hours is the regime that you want to be on. You need to leave a bit of recovery time in between for let them digest, let the system catch up, ready to go to the next one. I feed from 6 in the morning till 10 in the evening on my cycle. Then again, they've got all the evening to rest, recover, let the pond recuperate, ready for the next day as well. So from that basis, a mixed pond, if you've got a lot of bigger fish, you probably want to be looking feeding every 3 hours, so it doesn't become too excessive. But when you do that, basically, I'm going to talk to you about your feeding window. So let's just work on the basis of it's smaller fish and we're going every 2 hours. You need to set yourself a window. So with Tosai, I give the pond 10 minutes generally. So from feeding to the last kind of few pellets being eaten, I want them eating consistently for 10 minutes. Sometimes up that to 15. If I'm not happy with the body being produced and I know the pond can take it, I'll change that feeding window to 15 minutes to get more food into them. But let's just use 10 minutes because that's my average. So eventually when you get your feed level set, the idea is it takes them 10 minutes to eat it, and then you need to monitor some of them feeds throughout the day. So when you see that dropping off, say down to 9 minutes, 8 minutes, or whatever it is, you then need to add an increase across all your feeds to counteract for the growth that's been gained. At that point, you need to keep doing that, obviously, just to keep them burning. But what happens is at that point, if you're not getting the body, you need to come back to what I've just said previously and look to increase that feeding window. So the feeding window is important. It's just knowing how long to set it for. So if you're finding that at 10 minutes, you're still not getting the body that you want, increase it to 15 minutes and see how you get on. Just make sure, obviously, the system keeps up with it. And that's really just the way I go about it all season. And then I'm working that feed and just keeping the environment ticking over and dealing with the food that comes. If you've got the bigger fish, what I tend to do is I move over to a 3-hour cycle and I actually give the fish an hour to eat, because I've seen the feeding pattern behavior. When there's a lot of food, they're a lot more graceful in feeding. They're a lot slower in feeding as well. So basically that gives them an hour eating, then there's a 2-hour rest cycle in between before they come back to that hour eating session again. And that obviously means naturally as well, there's less feeds throughout the day. But what you also do then is on the same basis, when you've got them eating for that hour, as soon as that starts dropping off, you add a bit more food to bring them back up to it. So Hope that helps you. It's a very non-scientific approach to it, really quite simple when you get into the flow. But I say what I don't like doing is dropping that food in every hour all the time, because I like to give them some kind of rest in between to allow them to digest what they've had and go again from there. Dropping the temperature will help, but it's kind of cheating, because what you'll also miss out on in dropping the temperature is the length gains that you can get. So, you know, when you're right at being 24, 25, it's great, but you've just got to get the feeding level up to the right place. I would say that's the root reason why you're not getting the body at the moment. Also, diet. I presume, I don't know what diet you're feeding. You know, feel free to let me know. But at these temperatures, you need to make sure you're on a growth food, because you need the correct fat level, more importantly than anything. But fat, carbs, and proteins all need to be at the right levels and balanced. Balanced in the right way, so fish don't just get fatty. But yeah, to be honest with you, that's where you need to be, on a proper growth food that can do the business in building the body as well. Good question though. Always love a koi growth question. Right, what have we got, guys? Let's have a look. Nick, I've had a few. Oh, there we go. So that's coming back to the new pond. I've had a few carp pox and wanted to help the few fish. I lost one with a virus, but not sure what type. Right, salt can help with carp pox, as salt can help with a lot of viral illnesses. It just supports them. So yeah, no harm if that's what you're wanting to do it for. Although naturally this time of year, you should have the temperatures that should allow the carp pox to clear up, buddy, to be honest with you. So yeah, you're not going to hurt. I mean, you only really want to be around 0.3, 0.4% if you're doing it. But yeah, really, the temperatures now should be helping do the business with that one. And as for the fish you lost with the virus, again, I've not got all the information. But you know, that's not something that can just be said. You really need something to back that up. You probably not lost it through carp pox, but lost it through viruses without diagnosing. That's hard to say. So yeah, I'm not sure if I was just parasitic or something along them lines. But if you want to try and aid the carp pox, a bit of salt might help them, but it's not guaranteed. But you'll also do no harm in the process. So feel free to give it a try. Right, Sam. Realistically, how much would it cost to have a week's trip in Japan, and do you think it's worth it? Is a trip to Japan worth it for a hobbyist? Absolutely. Is it necessarily the best buying experience? No. I think it can be probably a much more difficult than walking into a dealer. And there's a lot that can go wrong in the whole chain that can be quite, you know, annoying at times as well for you when you pick that fish in Japan. But I think, yeah, it's absolutely worth it to see it. I mean, it's the mecca of koi. What a place to be, and just lap it all up. But yeah, cost-wise, you've got to be realistic about this, because we're talking, you know, this is really just totting up based on one person, and let's call it a trip to Niigata as well. So at the minute, we're flying from Heathrow. It's really the best option. So the flights on average, economy class with one of the Japanese airlines directly, is about £1,500. So that's a lot of money before you've even started. You know, you can get family holidays for this kind of money. And I know this is realistically the thing of balancing all this up. So your £1,500, a decent hotel is going to cost you around 8,000 to 10,000 yen a night. So we'll do it all worst case. So if you're looking 10,000 yen, current exchange rate, you're looking £55 a night for that one. So let's call that 7 nights. You don't really want to be doing a Japan trip for less than 7 nights, because take it from my experience, it's not very pleasant on your body. So you're like 388 quid there for hotels. Your train tickets you're going to have to use to get from the airport to Nagaoka, where you're going to be. So they're normally around about 12,000 yen each, and you've got that both ways. Over there. So you're talking about another £130 on that one. And then you've obviously got your sort of food expenses. Food is fairly priced on there, and it really depends how much you want to drink. Drink can get a bit pricey, to be honest. But yeah, that could be an open-ended budget on food. you're going to at the very least need to allow yourself sort of 500 quid, and that might be skimping at that, to be fair. It's not something I particularly track, but let's just stick that in there. Theoretically, you're living on sandwiches for a week, and then obviously you're potentially fish purchasing, take that out completely. So what we got there, if we tot all that up, off the top of my head, I don't think I've missed anything there. Obviously, you're going to have your journey down to Heathrow, depending on where you are, which can add up a bit as well. So I think realistically for that week, you're going to be minimum 2.5 grand getting on for £3,000 for a week out there, which is a lot of money. I know you can get some pretty decent holidays for that kind of money, but just depends where you're at. If you're in a position to do it, you will absolutely love it, especially if you get on the right trip. Don't get on something that's too sales focused if that's not what you're looking for. Make sure there's that element of enjoyment, the sightseeing and stuff factored into it for you, because there is a lot to see. But yeah, it's a steep one, so a lot to balance up. But yes, I believe it'd be worth it for you. You would love it, especially the right time of year. Harvest season is definitely the one to try and do. Get involved in a bit of that stuff as well. But like I said, a lot of money. It's even got me kind of, and the journey's even longer now as well. So it's got me thinking twice about, normally where I might just a shot out for something. I really sort of, think twice now. Do I need to do it? And yeah, it really knackers. The whole jet lag thing is horrendous. I think you're a good. Normally, I kind of feel it at sort of between 8 and 10 days. My body finally snapping in. I felt with the autumn trip. That's kind of what it felt like. And then, yeah, if you're on a week one, I mean, Christ, you're in the midst of just adjusting before you throw yourself back, and you pay for it. But yeah, like I say, an amazing trip if you can afford it. But yeah, so I think right now I'd take the holiday, to be honest with you. Right, let's see what else we've got. David Thompson, getting a new pond with a Waza compact drum. How long to mature, and is it okay to put koi straight in? Right, maturing process. I mean, we're talking, you want to get cycling through. The big thing in maturing a pond is getting it cycling and then getting out of the ammonia phase as quickly as possible. The only way I say put koi straight in and just let the water settle down, make sure it's well dechlorinated, a bit more settled. I'd leave it just naturally running for a couple of weeks before you put some fish in, just to let things start settling down, let nature start taking its course a little bit. Then you do need to get some koi in. You can't avoid that bit. You need to get koi in to get the filter cycling properly. You need to get some ammonia in there to start feeding that filter. It can't mature without a food source. You need to feed it. So koi in and start getting some food in there as well, very, very gently. You will get spikes, and make sure you've got products on hand to deal with those spikes as quickly as possible. But yeah, the good thing is for me, but I've got experience, is getting the whole system firing straight away. But having the heat, when you've got the heat, sort of 24, 25 degrees, you cycle a pond a lot faster. So you can sort of get in and get out of that ammonia cycle really quickly. When you haven't, you're at lower temperatures, you've got to be careful because it's going to linger around for a lot more before it drops. So I'd say, if you're new, just be cautious with it. But get fish in there, get feeding, get some good bacteria products on hand like EA filter gel or PSB bacteria. And then from there on in, just kind of manage it, but don't back out. That's what a lot of people do, is basically kind of get in there and see that first bit of ammonia and back out. But all you're going to do is prolong the agony when that happens, unfortunately. If you back out, it's going to adapt to that low level again. And then what you're probably going to find is there's going to be another spike when you eventually take it up. Again, because even in mature systems, we have these spikes. When we go from one feeding level to another, naturally, we get spikes across the parameters. The filter just has to speed up and adapt, and there's already a better base level there. So hope that's useful. But yeah, like I say, just get on with it. Just don't go too crazy filling it when you've not got the heat. Don't, load your pond capacity and start feeding 0.5 kilo a day. That's going to end in disaster. But getting some fish in and starting with the feeding and getting that spike as quickly as possible, especially while it is summer and you've got some warmth. Get on with it now to get the pond as settled as possible, because if you're not heating, you're going to go into winter and you're going to hibernate again. So even where we're at now, the likelihood is you probably won't have gained enough maturity to avoid some of the pitfalls you might face coming out of spring at the other end if you're not heated. Right, folks, I'm only going to do a couple more because honestly, I'm starving and I don't know what's got to me. My eyes are sore and I'm not feeling the best. So I'm going to wrap it up soon. Right, let me see. And there we go. Question there from Nathan that kind of ties into it a little bit. If I have ammonia in the pond, should I completely stop feeding and do big water changes, or just scale back a little and do water changes? Currently feeding is only 4 times 16 grams per day in a 1,000-gallon pond on an easy pod. Yeah, well, not a lot of food then. Nathan, it just depends where you're at in the cycle. But like I said there, I think the hardest thing, it depends how high the ammonia is. But I would like to generally keep going with what you're doing. You're not feeding too much there. I can see that. You might want to just look at your flow rates, make sure you're not pumping and pulling the water through your easy pod too fast. But get some products in there to help colonize that bacteria faster to pull the ammonia back down. That's on the basis that that's a new pond. If this is an established pond, it's probably going to be a different scenario, but I don't know that from what you said unless I've missed it. So yeah, on that basis, if it's a new pond, like I say, just kind of persevere and try and use some of them additives to help deal with it. If it's in an older pond, you might need to look at what's caused it, and necessarily have you done something different? Have you had a KH crash? Or as I say, if it's just an older system and it's not performing very well, look at the flow rates through it as well, because filter retention time could be an issue. All right, there we go. Colin just coming back to me. Just to recap on what you said, the Costia was found on a fish that was not eating, losing body weight and a few sores on the belly. Does Costia only attack weak fish? And what's the sign to look for? Doesn't necessarily attack weak fish, but that in that instance, that sounds like that's your problem there, Colin, mate, to be honest with you. That fish is going to be a host for that Costia. I'd say until a point when it's done. Costia don't generally tend to stop until it's dead. It won't stick around on a dead fish. It'll go looking for a new host, and that'll be healthy fish, which it'll try to take down. But yeah, generally, that might be your problem there with that one, buddy. If it's a constant reoccurring problem with Costia, that might be the issue, and you might just have to address how you deal with that particular fish. But certainly when they start losing body weight is when Costia seems to really prey on them. And like I say, from that point, Costia is free swimming, and it will spread to the other fish, which will then lead to further illness in them if it's not dealt with. Okay. Paul Prentice, my first year with a pond. Basic question, probably not a problem there, buddy. I'm getting algae growth on a regular occurrence. I've already paid for 1 round of treatments a few months back. It's come back again for a few months. Some say just leave it to naturally cycle, but the water goes to crap when it's about. Yeah, I mean, so I presume we're talking about blanket weed here. Algae would more refer to as green, the single cell algae that causes green water. So if it's not that, and we're talking about blanket weed, yeah, the stuff can be tricky. It's your first year with a pond, so your pond is cycling. There's a lot going off. It needs to find a balance naturally. You might not have enough fish in there at the minute, because fish it is a good food source for fish, and they will naturally help kind of keep on top of it. They do in my ponds, and there's some of them the minute the fish are out there. I mean, God, within a week, it's absolutely infested with blanket weed. Fill it back up with fish again in 2 days, it's vanished. They do like to munch on it, so that might be part of the problem. Like I say, your pond's going through, it's got to find its balance and all the changes, so that might be it. And it might also come down to the treatment that you're using. Depends on it. It is natural that it could come back after a few months and you need to retreat. I'd just possibly look at what it is that you're using treatment-wise. To be honest with you, you don't want to be using something that really rocks the environment a lot. My choice, I haven't actually medicated for blanket weed for a long time, but was always Columbo Algacin. I do still have it. What I tend to find is you're just using that, it slowly cuts it back so it doesn't overload the filters, doesn't change the pond environment too much either. So yeah, hope that helps. I say it might just be circumstances of where you're at, but after a few months, it's more than likely that you may well need to treat again, given you've probably not got a lot of fish in there if it's a new pond, and your pond is sort of going through the motions as well. So hope that sheds some light for you, Paul. Crafty, will you be there tomorrow? I should hope so, mate, because I've got an appointment booked with you. So I am planning on turning up, buddy. Don't worry. Right, last one, guys. Let me have a look what we've got. I've not actually been in the live comments either, guys, to be honest with you. I mean, Steve there just feeding the comments through to me. Does make life a bit easier, so I can just focus on them. Okay, George, I have koi fry this year. Haven't got the capacity to overwinter them in warmth. What's the best way to get them through the winter? I have a greenhouse and a garage. I can keep them in. Well, yeah, obviously, the trick right now with the koi fry is to get as much body weight and growth on them as possible. Make sure they're in the best health as well going into winter, as well, kind of autumn. Make sure the parasite 3 is chunky and as big as possible. That's going to be your biggest saving grace. You need to pile that weight on them now. That is essential anyway. You don't want to be carrying koi fry 2 through to winter too small. Not ideal for them. You need to get the growth on, get that cracking. So that's where I would go with that one. Then if you're not quite happy with the size of them and you want to just keep them, as best as you can through winter, you need to get them out of the harsh environment. So if you can get them into a greenhouse or a garage, that's going to be your best way, just to keep the extreme cool off of them, to be honest with you. So but best thing you can do, get the weight on them. That's going to be their biggest saving grace, and they're going to be able to handle a lot more, certainly coming out of winter into spring as well. So hope that's useful for you, George. Crafty, can you plug my Momotaro grow out event? I'm not sure I've got the energy, mate, to be honest with you. Not actually spoke to you about the full details of it, but let's have a chat tomorrow, buddy, and we'll do it. But in the meantime, have a look on Perfect Aquatics page, because he has got a pretty banging event going on with some Momotaro fish that we sourced for him in Japan. Have a look at it. Well worth it. Momotaro fish are pretty insane. The real original jumbo line is the farm that took jumbo to a whole new level as we knew it. So give him a crack. And apologies tonight, folks. I'm really not quite sure. I've had just an hard day. I come in here and all of a sudden just feel like I've been hit by a bus, to be fair. Do know the wife's not been too well. I hope it's not something she's passed on to me. I'll be pretty annoyed at that, but there we go. Apologies for not being 100%. I was going to keep these ones a bit shorter anyway, because I've got to get back home with the kids. But there we have it for another week. Be back next week and hopefully get some koi appreciation worked on. What I am also going to be doing is bringing Joe on with me. Hopefully, maybe not every week, but most weeks, because actually something Crafty mentioned to me, it'd be a really good shout. Obviously, I really love Joe's perception on things, because Joe is a newbie. Still, we can't forget that. And his angle when we're discussing stuff, it might actually be topical that we discuss between us, things that are on Joe's mind and he'd like to learn. It almost be like some staff training live on air, to be honest. But then, other than that, just as we're answering things, I'll have him there for some perspective, on stuff that we're answering, to make sure we really cover it, and maybe just, feeding the questions or things as I'm saying it, that you guys, it might not be translating properly or go too far over the top. So I think it'll be a really nice angle. And so from next week, I know he's already said we can do next week, and hopefully from there on in. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And like I say, be back next Wednesday for the auction, and Thursday for Q&A.